Okay, I want you to close your eyes for a second. Don't close them if you're driving, but just imagine the concept of a motherland. Usually when we use that word, what pops into your head?
Soil, geography, a place.
Right. It's the place on the map where you were born. It's the food you grew up eating, maybe the way the air smells. It's physical.
Tangible.
Exactly. But today, we're going to completely flip that script. What if Motherland wasn't a place on a map at all?
What if it was a spiritual state?
Yes. And what if entering that state required you to essentially delete your current operating system, your language, your politics even who you fall in love with, and just install a new one?
That is the premise we are unpacking today.
It is. We are doing a deep dive into a fascinating, complex, and honestly pretty radical source. It's a speech, or really sermon, titled The Heart of God and the Restoration of the Motherland.
And it was delivered by Reverend Myung Moon, who was the founder of the Unification Church.
And the context here is so key. The date is February 27th, 1983. The location is Belvedere, New York. So paint the picture for us. 1983.
Okay, so it's the peak of the Cold War. The tension is palpable.
Yeah.
You have the Soviet Union looming as this, existential threat to the West, the evil empire, as Reagan would call it.
Right.
And then you have this Korean religious leader standing in front of an American audience, basically telling them that everything they think they know about their country, their language, their destiny is wrong.
Or at least incomplete.
Exactly. And the mission of this deep dive is to show you how this one source weaves together three things that seem completely unrelated.
Yeah.
We're talking about 1, the linguistics of learning the Korean language, 2, the metaphysics of God's loneliness, and 3, a hardcore geopolitical strategy to defeat global communism.
Yeah, usually grammar lessons and nuclear strategy they don't hang out in the same room.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
But in this worldview, they're inseparable. Now, just before we jump in, a quick disclaimer for everyone listening.
Sure.
We are analyzing this text as a historical and theological document. Our goal is to explore the internal logic of the speaker's world, to see how the puzzle pieces fit together for the people in that room, not to endorse the theology or the politics.
We are just the guides on the tour. So let's start with the most immediate practical demand the speaker makes. It's about language.
Yeah.
And he does not beat around the bush here.
Not at all. He starts by introducing this concept of the original motherland. And the argument is basically this. In an ideal, unfallen world.
Before the fall of man?
Right. Before all that, humanity wouldn't have been divided by different languages. No Tower of Babel. We would have shared a single original language that came directly from God's own thought.
So we'd all be speaking Godish.
Essentially. But here's the pivot. The speaker claims that because the true parents, which is how he refers to himself and his wife, appeared in Korea, God had to express his love through the Korean language.
So it's not just a cultural thing. He's arguing the hardware of the language itself is now divinely sanctioned.
Correct. The text says God had to adapt to that situation. Because the spiritual foundation was laid in Korea, Korean stops being just a national tongue. It becomes the native language of the restored ideal world.
And he put some serious pressure on his American followers to get on board with this. It's not like, oh, it'd be nice if you learned a few phrases. He brings up the afterlife.
The spirit world. This is a fascinating part of the text. Right. He warns them that if they die and go to the spirit world without knowing Korean, they're going to face profound shame.
Shame from who?
Their ancestors. He says your ancestors will blame you. He asks what shame you will have if you go to spirit world, never had any experience on earth of speaking to true parents directly in the native language.
And he actually mocks a hypothetical follower who might complain. He asks, and I'm quoting here, are you going to say, I hate to have to learn Korean, I just want to use English? It's almost funny, but the implication is heavy. He's basically telling them that English is a deviated language, a relic of a fallen world. If you want to be part of the future, you have to speak the language of the future.
And he backs this up with a linguistic argument. He actually claims Korean is technically superior
to English. In what way?
He talks about the richness of the language. He says Korean has the richest variety of adjectives and a total spectrum of color words that other languages just lack.
So the idea is that if you can't describe a color with that much nuance, you can't really experience God's creation fully.
Exactly. Your language limits your spiritual perception. He says if you speak Korean well, you have the aptitude to learn any other language easily.
Yeah.
But if you're stuck in English, well, you're spiritually and intellectually capped.
And then comes the ultimatum. This was the part where I thought, whoa, he is not playing around.
The deadline. He asks the audience how long they need, and they apparently shout back 3 years.
Wow.
So he sets the date, 1985. He says, from
Mhm.
1985, I will stop using an interpreter.
That is a boss move. Learn my language or you lose access to the Word of God. It really reinforces this idea that you aren't just joining a movement, you are migrating.
Yes.
You are leaving your old culture behind and entering this new motherland of the mind.
Which is the perfect transition to the core concept here, because Motherland isn't just about speaking Korean. It's really about the metaphysics of love.
This section of the text gets pretty deep, pretty fast. He starts with a kind of theological paradox. He asks, what is the one thing God cannot do?
It's a classic riddle.
Oh.
God is omnipotent, creates the universe, can do anything. But the text argues there is one exception.
What's that?
God cannot create love for himself.
Because love requires a partner. You can't high-five yourself.
Exactly. Or as the text puts it, you can't experience the most appreciation alone.
Yeah.
He uses the analogy of a man and a woman. A man needs a woman needs a man to experience the fullness of love. And he applies that same logic to the Creator. God needs an object, a counterpart, to feel love.
So God is love.
Profoundly. The text presents a very emotional, almost vulnerable image of God. A God who has been forced to follow fallen humanity into these miserable, dirty places throughout history, just trying to repair the relationship.
And that repair process is what he calls indemnity. Right.
Yes. Indemnity is a huge concept in this theology. It's the idea that because of the fall, we can't just walk back into the Garden of Eden. You have to pay a condition. You have to earn your way back.
And the destination, where are we trying to get back to?
The four-position foundation.
Okay, let's unpack that term. He uses it a lot.
It sounds technical, but it's actually about family. The four-position foundation is the structure of God, true parents, and children, a divine family unit. And here's the key to the whole deep dive.
Okay.
The true motherland is simply wherever this foundation exists.
So it's portable.
Precisely. He says the true motherland is where they are, God is. If the true parents are in Korea, that's the motherland. If they move to America, the motherland is there. It completely redefines geography as spiritual proximity.
So if the motherland is a spiritual family, who gets to be part of it? Because, I mean, this is 1983. Racial tension in America is still very real.
And the text takes this really interesting detour into race and nature to address that. He uses these very pastoral, almost folky analogies to argue that racism is scientifically unnatural.
Yeah, the cows. I love the cow analogy.
It's a great image, right?
Yeah.
He talks about white cows and brown cows eating in a meadow. He says they never notice each other's colors. They just eat the grass.
And then he brings up dogs, Dobermans and poodles, different shapes, different colors, but he says they don't practice racial discrimination.
His whole point is that discrimination is a human invention, a symptom of the fallen world. In nature, differences exist, but they don't cause conflict. He asks this rhetorical question. Is it true that all white people only enjoy daytime and never enjoy the nighttime?
Meaning you need both. Light and dark are complementary.
Right. But he doesn't just want everyone to, get along. He proposes a very specific biological solution to racism. He calls it the love race.
This is where the theology becomes sociology.
Absolutely. He advocates for interracial marriage, specifically mentioning black and white unity, to create a united or original love race.
Yay.
The idea is that true love is the only force strong enough to bridge these huge historical gaps.
And speaking of historical gaps, he is pretty tough on American history. He doesn't sugarcoat how the country was founded.
No, he's blunt. He states the decline of the Native American population wasn't natural. It was at the hands of the white American immigrants.
Wow.
He argues that because America was founded on bloodshed, without that foundation of love, it faces eventual decline. He sees the racial conflict of the 80s as a kind of karmic result of that origin story.
So his solution is this loveism, mixing the races to undo the history of hate. But, and this is the big turn in the whole thing, this loveism isn't just about peace and harmony.
No, it's also a weapon.
A weapon against communism. This is where the text shifts gears completely. We go from a sermon on love and cows to a war room briefing. He lays out this incredible geopolitical chessboard.
This is a hallmark of his worldview. He doesn't see nations as just political entities. He sees them as characters in a spiritual drama. He assigns roles to countries based on the biblical family of Adam and Eve.
Let's run through the roster for World War II because it is wild.
Okay, so according to the source, on God's side, you had England in the position of Eve, America was Adam, and France was the archangel.
And the bad guys.
On Satan's side, Japan was Eve. The text describes Japan as being like a woman with many gods or many lovers unfaithful, and Germany was the satanic Adam, masculine, aggressive.
So World War II was basically a spiritual family feud played out with tanks and airplanes.
Precisely. And the text argues that God's side won, but, and this is the crucial point, America failed to digest its enemies.
Digest. That is such a weird word choice for geopolitics.
It is, but it's consistent in his thought. It implies absorption. After winning, America didn't fully absorb and transform the spiritual lineage of the defeated nations. And that failure created a vacuum.
That allowed communism to rise.
Exactly. He's also really hard on the United Nations. He calls it a communistic tool that America is just paying the bills for. He sees it as a failed attempt at world unity because it lacks a godly center.
So he proposes a new alignment for the new world of 1983. The roster changes.
It does. In this new alignment, Korea takes the position of Adam. Japan, interestingly, is still Eve, but now on God's side. America moves to the position of Abel, the younger brother.
And Germany.
Germany's Cain, the older brother.
So the upshot is these four former enemies, Korea, Japan, America, Germany, have to unite.
Right. They must form a foundation. And he specifically says that once these four unite, the African nations will follow. It's a very hierarchical model of world salvation.
And the target of this alliance, Moscow.
The power of Moscow.
Yeah.
The text is very explicit. This is a war. He draws a parallel to Moses. Just as the Israelites followed Moses to Canaan, he predicts that Americans will follow him to Moscow.
The march to Moscow, it sounds intense. He talks about liberating the satellite countries.
And it all connects back to the motherland concept. You can't have a restored motherland if half the world is under satanic dominion, which is how he views Soviet communism.
There is also a very specific role for women in this spiritual war. He spends a good chunk of the speech talking directly to the American women in the audience.
He does. He tells them they are in the Eve position, and their mission is to subjugate the archangel.
Okay, what does that mean in plain English?
So in this theology, the archangel represents the satanic forces, but it also represents men who haven't been restored. He's essentially telling the women, you have to be stronger than the men. You have to be stronger than Satan.
It's a fascinating flip of the script. He says, you American women have already learned how to control men. He acknowledges that power dynamic, but then tells them to use it for a spiritual purpose.
Right. He tells them not to use that power for themselves, but for the spiritual cleanup.
Yeah.
And that cleanup isn't just geopolitical, it's moral and domestic.
Yeah, he lists the domestic enemies. It's not just the Soviets. It's drug abuse, homosexuality, prostitution, gambling. He specifically calls out Las Vegas casinos as something that needs to be cleaned up.
So the war's on two fronts, one against the Soviet Union and the other against the moral decay inside America. And he tells the women, I will make you into such strong heavenly soldiers.
It's empowering, but in a very specific militaristic context. The fight isn't physical, it's a battle of thought and truth.
And that's where the concept of unificationism or loveism comes back. It is the weapon that digests communism.
There's that word digest again. You don't just defeat the enemy on the battlefield, you absorb them, you turn them into you.
Which brings us full circle back to the language.
Right.
If you learn the language, you absorb the thought. If you marry the enemy, you absorb the race. If you defeat communism with loveism, you absorb the political world.
It's a strategy of total integration.
It is. It's a worldview where nothing is separate. You can't just be a casual believer. To restore the motherland, you have to change your tongue, your family structure, your politics. It demands everything.
Toward the end, he makes this bold claim about where all this knowledge comes from. Because let's be honest, this isn't stuff you learn in a political science class.
No. He talks about his heart library.
Heart library, I like that image.
He compares it to Harvard. He says, no library at Harvard has this knowledge. You can only access his heart library with a heart key.
It's a classic appeal to revelation over academic study. He's telling the listener, I have the map to the motherland. It's locked in my heart. You need the key, and I'm the only one who can give it to you.
And the price of that key is, well, everything. Learning Korean, marching to Moscow, accepting the love race. It's a high-demand faith.
There's a quote near the end that I think really sums up the energy of the whole speech. He acknowledges that people might think this is all a bit nuts.
No.
The language ultimatum, the geopolitical chess, the cows and dogs. And he says, the only reason why you accept and even welcome such sermons is that you are crazy love crazy.
And he adds, love craziness is The only kind of craziness that is good and healthy.
That is such a sticky idea. That to build this ideal world, you have to be willing to be crazy by the world's standards.
It completely reframes the radical nature of his demands as a badge of honor. If you aren't crazy for love, you aren't doing it right. It's a powerful rhetorical device. It insulates the followers from criticism. If the world calls you crazy, it just means you're on the right track.
So we've unpacked a lot today. We've gone from grammar lessons and color spectrums to the Cold War and the March to Moscow. It's a lot to take in. What is the big takeaway here? Why does this speech from 1983 matter to someone listening right now?
I think it illustrates the power of a total worldview. You know, most of us live in compartments. We have our political views over here, our spiritual beliefs over there, our cultural habits somewhere else. This text shows what it looks like when someone attempts to collapse all those walls.
Hmm.
It challenges the listener to ask, is my world fragmented?
Mm.
And what would it cost to make it whole?
That is the question. And I want to leave you with one final thought derived from that love crazy idea. The speaker argues that normal, rational behavior isn't enough to change history. Only a specific kind of craziness can do that. So, regardless of what you think about his theology or politics, ask yourself this. What is the one thing in your life you care about so much that you would be willing to be called crazy for it? Because according to this text, if you aren't willing to be crazy, you aren't really in love.
A provocative standard to hold ourselves to.
Indeed. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us into the restoration of the motherland.
See you next time.